The total sum of comprehensive lore that exists within the Star Wars universe is constantly growing, changing, and expanding, with each new entry adding a new layer of depth and complexity to the pre-existing story that has been building for 4 decades now. As the vast expanse of the galaxy grows, however, new changes and retcons become not only necessary, but inevitable in order to retroactively fit prior entries into the intricate web of relationships, plot lines, and more that the Star Wars franchise is continually weaving together. This usually results in relatively minor recontextualizations of certain scenes and add more depth and perspective to story beats that weren't built around these new viewpoints. At the center of many of these various changes is the puppet master behind the downfall of the Republic and the rise of the darkest era in modern Star Wars history. Emperor Sheev Palpatine, former Supreme Chancellor turned figurehead of the Galactic Empire. While his end goal continually revolves around the complete domination of the Sith regime over the galaxy, and the total control of as much power as he can obtain, the exact means by which he takes this approach are often susceptible to changes and retroactive adjustments over time. It was recently revealed in the novel Secrets of the Sith, which is told from Palpatine's perspective, that his true vision of the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, actually had far more depth than we were previously led to believe. So stick with us today, weary travelers of the galaxy, and let's explore this retcon, how it ties the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy together, and how it ultimately resulted in the downfall of the Emperor. And of course, asking you the question at the end, do you like this retcon and change to Star Wars? The plan as we knew it was simply to convert one of the most powerful Force users in history into a lapdog for the dark side, and utilize his raw potential in order to control and expand his reign into the darkest corners of the galaxy. The Chosen One was a legend passed down across generations, eventually culminating with the birth of Anakin Skywalker, an incredibly gifted Jedi Knight and later a ferocious Dark Lord of the Sith who acted at the behest of Palpatine himself, leading us to believe that Palpatine had ultimately succeeded in his end goal. Though this seemed like the extent of his plan, we have recently come to learn that more went on behind the scenes than we previously thought, and the fullest extent of Palpatine's plan was ultimately never realized. The concept of a Force dyad is a relatively new introduction to the Star Wars franchise, rising to prominence with the release of the sequel trilogy, but recently this aspect has been retconned into the franchise's previously established lore of the universe. It was revealed that Darth Plagueis had previously attempted to bend the Force to his will in order to create a similar dyad between himself and his own apprentice, Palpatine, Darth Sidious himself, and this practice spans back centuries, with each generation of Sith Master and Apprentice attempting to create this bond between one another, in order to exert their will over the fabric of the very Force itself. Upon the realization that the Chosen One had been born and was rising to power under the Jedi Order, Palpatine finally saw an opportunity to bond the two most powerful galactic bloodlines, in order to create the best chance of creating a successful dyad where his predecessors had ultimately fallen short and failed. This dyad would allow Palpatine to create a bond between himself and Vader that was said to be as strong as the force of life itself, spanning across time and space and making them one in the Force despite being two separate entities, drastically expanding the scope of their powers to a point of being nigh unimaginable, essentially both of them becoming Sith gods. What's also important to remember is that there is no mention in the book about Sidious attempting this practice with either Maul or Dooku, which most likely is a testament to how special Anakin Skywalker was, how powerful his bloodline was within the Force, and how promising this connection ultimately seemed, though Sidious attempted to create this dyad between himself and his new apprentice to no avail. Despite having Vader by his side for 2 decades, they were continuously unsuccessful in creating this fabled bond, just like the centuries of Sith Masters and apprentices before them, despite allegedly bonding the two of the most powerful Force bloodlines in the galaxy. Something though that would later come into fruition with Ben Solo and Rey, presumably because the two of them were better linked as opposites in the Force and actually the dyad brought them together as one, with this potentially being one of the major factors that the Sith are missing, that in order for a dyad to be formed, they have to originate from opposing sides of the Force, as again no two Sith in the history of Star Wars have ever achieved a Force dyad. Upon this new generation of Sith failing yet again, despite despite having two of the most powerful Force users as their subjects. Palpatine even began to doubt the existence of the dyad, and came to doubt whether or not it was even possible to create in the first place, believing that it could have potentially just been a myth, which was a precedent that would remain until the sequel trilogy, where the key flaw in Palpatine's plan and the plan of all Sith before them was finally revealed. We learn in the sequel trilogy that Ben Solo and Rey are a working, functional dyad, two beings who are one within the fabric of the Force and the view of the galaxy, one from the Skywalker bloodline and one of the Palpatine dynasty, just like the Emperor had hypothesized. Where Palpatine and the generations of Sith before him had gone wrong, however, was that they had continually attempted to create a dyad between two Sith who had already embraced the dark side. Even Palpatine, upon converting Anakin to the ways of the Sith and granting him the title of Darth Vader, attempted to create the fabled dark side after Anakin had already given in to the allure of the darkness. The dyad is a physical manifestation of the balance within the Force, the light and the dark coexisting together as one, and therefore it took one embodiment of the light and one of the dark to truly succeed in creating a balanced bond strong enough for a living dyad to be produced. With both users being practitioners of the dark side, the scales of balance were uneven, and the dyad was intangible and unable to be manifested for years until the circumstances arose that allowed for Palpatine and a Skywalker to each represent both sides of the Force in tandem with one another, Rey and Ben Solo. In actuality, a complete accident, as it was not Palpatine's intention to create a dyad between the two of them. This would eventually prove to be Palpatine's darkest downfall, however, as the members of the dyad that he had sought to create for years eventually became the ones to turn on him and finally topple the rule of the Palpatine legacy once and for all. But that is the major retcon and the major reason why Palpatine wanted to turn Anakin Skywalker to the dark side of the Force. He believed that a being of his own caliber and ability to touch the Force, paired with that of a Skywalker, the chosen one, could actually create this ultimate power in the Force, essentially creating two dark side and Sith gods, the power and bloodline of a Palpatine and the power and bloodline of a Skywalker, only choosing to amplify one another, creating something unstoppable, a being one in the Force with pure dark side energy, with it not being Palpatine's ultimate plan to turn Anakin Skywalker simply because he held the greatest potential in the Force than any other being before him, but because Palpatine intended to create a dyad with the boy. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this retcon? Do you think it makes sense that Palpatine wanted to create a dyad with Darth Vader? And do you agree with the explanation about why it did not work? I would love to hear what you have to say about this in the comments down below, and whether or not you're in favor of the dyad and the retcon. As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope to see you in the next one, and may the Force be with you.